What it is, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this show. Who's us? Me, Doshi, and my guest, Daniel Lee, DNAJ Lion 7 on YouTube. So let me tell you a little bit about my guest, and I want to thank him for joining me. He has a very hot channel right now on YouTube with almost 20,000 subscribers in the last 30 days. So this is actually, if you don't know who he is yet, you are about to find out if you're looking into the areas of interest which Daniel covers, which as of about 30 days ago, or whenever Isaac Cappy came out with his story about Steven Spielberg, and Sarah Ruth Ashcraft came out with her story about Tom Hanks. Daniel's been covering this topic, pedophilia, some of the same stuff I've been covering too. So welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Nathan.
No problem. What made you, well, you were making videos before you started making videos on these topics. What were you making videos about? Like, what were you all about?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, actually, I've had my YouTube channel since 2007. And from 2007 to 2018, so that's what, 11 years? It took me 11 years to get to 2,500 subscribers. And it was basically a channel exclusively focused on introducing Christians to the Hebrew Jewish roots of the Christian faith, talking about Torah, street preaching, things like that. You know, I only would normally get maybe a couple hundred views on my videos, and that's about it. But it's actually been a little longer than a month. It was on July the 31st that I actually started, because Isaac came out in mid to late July. And I first saw Isaac. That's what, I mean, God used Isaac to really inspire me and awaken me about this whole topic about pedophiles and pedivores and what's going on in Hollywood and DC. And then as I started watching Isaac, I actually watched Isaac on your channel. That led me into investigating, and I found out about Fiona Barnett and Sarah Ashcraft. So then I started studying Fiona Barnett. I also watched her interview with you, and I started watching all the interviews that Fiona Barnett has done, because she's been doing this for decades. And she really, she inspired me even more. So on July the 31st, I felt God basically telling me, I want you to stop everything you're doing, and I want you to use your YouTube channel and your platform to exclusively center on exposing pedophiles and protecting the innocent children. And I honestly thought that I was just going to make a couple videos, get a couple hundred views maybe, and that would be it. And I would just move back to what I was doing. That's what I thought. But within a few videos, Sarah Ashcraft reached out to me personally, and she retweeted one of my earlier videos to her 40,000 followers. That was like the first couple days in August. She really liked my video that I made about Crispin Glover, who plays the father of Marty McFly on Back to the Future, and how he outs Steven Spielberg as a pedophile. So she really liked my stuff, and then from there it just started climbing. So basically, it's been since July 31st. So it's been about 2 months now. But from 2 months, I went from 2,500 subscribers to now over 20,000.
Right, and that's something that I definitely noticed, and it's explosive growth for a channel. I think, to be fair, the same kind of thing happened to me with the same topics, actually, because I started covering Isaac Cappy, and then I had Michael Whalen on, and you just had Michael Whalen on recently, so that was something that put you more on my radar too. And I picked up a similar number of subscribers probably in about 30 days. Since then, I've kind of backed off just because of a lot of the backlash and just wanted to take it easy. But people like you have been, continuing to cover this subject. So when you say you started to get into this stuff around that time, before then, what was your awareness of elite pedophilia, satanic ritual abuse, and so forth?
Virtually nil. I mean, I knew there was some sort of pedophile problem in Hollywood, but in terms of a whole Luciferian, pedivore, all that stuff, the only exposure I'd ever had to that was many, many years ago, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when I read a book by a woman who was in a satanic cult that got out of it and gave her life to Christ. I forget what the name of the book was. I'll have to look it up, but it was a book that was really popular back then. And she talked a lot of similar stuff about what Fiona talks about. But other than that, I had no exposure at all. And it's literally been through just investigating on my own. And the one thing I really like about Fiona in particular, she writes everything down. So you can actually go to her website and get documents and see what she's written and then verify that and cross-check it. I like Isaac Cappy too, but Isaac just sort of makes periscopes and doesn't write much down except on his Twitter. I do like Isaac, but Fiona really is a scholar about this stuff. And that's why I point a lot of people her way, because her thorough documentation that she's done for decades really is able to get you up to speed very quickly on these topics.
So you didn't have any real awareness of satanic ritual abuse until this very recently, right? What was your reaction to hearing about it for the first time, or in depth for the first time? And what convinced you? What made you inclined to believe that what these people were saying was true?
So, well, my initial reaction is probably like most Americans, just utter disgust and, I mean, horrific, and in fact, I'm about to release a bombshell story later this week that I'm going to actually have to tell viewers to not allow children to watch it because of the details I've gotten. But it was very horrific and almost unbelievable. But for some reason, when I saw Isaac Cappy give his initial testimony, and then when he interviewed with you, I really felt that Isaac was sincere. And then what really sealed the deal was when you interviewed Michael Whalen, particularly the second interview you did, and the tears in Michael's eyes, and just like, I mean, I don't know how anyone can say that Michael's insincere, because he obviously, and by the way, you did a great job interviewing him as well. And then I've since learned more details that I can't share about Michael, that I know he's telling the truth because of me meeting Jason Boss, who I think you know as well. And then, so I just felt like they were being very sincere just on a feeling basis. But then on the mental, logical basis, when I started just studying Fiona and all the credibility she's had, I mean, for decades, her story hasn't changed. And any trial lawyer will tell you that if a witness's story doesn't change, it's probably true, And so I really studied her. And then I saw you interview Fiona. And then Fiona gave several interviews. And there was one interview where she actually starts talking about a lot of my own personal beliefs. She talks about the Sabbath day being on Saturday. She talks about how we're supposed to keep Passover and not Easter. And when she started talking about how she keeps Torah just like I do, I was like, okay, this is, I'm convinced now. So I just really felt God's been leading me. I've been substantiating things with evidence that I've been sent by various anonymous sources and sources that I've been able to name. And I'm thoroughly convinced that this is all true. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the sources you have, because it's something I think you called into my show early on, or maybe 3 weeks ago or something like that, saying that you already had people approaching you as sources. So I really want to get into that. First, before, just to get it out of the way, tell us about your faith, because I think,
Sure. Yeah, my website is spiritandtorah.com, and it's just basically, it's known as Messianic Judaism, or the Messianic Jewish faith. When I say Jewish, I know that can be a red flag, so I'll just come out and say that Messianic Jews, by and large, we reject the Talmud, we reject Zohar, we reject Kabbalah, we reject these things. They should have no place in the faith. We stick to the Torah, which is the first 5 books in any Bible that you can pick up in any bookstore. And we stick to the whole Bible. We believe in the Brit Hadashah, which is the Jewish term for the New Testament. We believe Jesus, Yahshua, is the king, just like the Christians do. The place where we sort of deviate from modern day Christianity is that we believe that Jesus did not do away with Torah, but that he taught us how to obey Torah in a loving way. That Torah brings us closer to Christ. And that's probably the major way that we deviate from most modern Christian denominations.
Okay, great. Well, I don't have any objections to any faith, and I think obviously your faith is something. This is and we're going to talk about this. This is a dangerous topic to discuss, right? And you've been doing it for a little while, but not too long. And it requires faith, and that's why, and you'll find a lot of these survivors have some kind of faith. And I certainly feel like it's necessary for the work I do too. So I understand that. So I just want to go over, let's talk first about what we talked about last night. The story. So I want to go over kind of what has gotten your YouTube channel to where it is right now. I was just going through your old videos on your channel. This is his channel, everybody, DNA Lion 7. And there are a few in specific to talk about. Let me see. Let me kind of go through it piece by piece. Let me start with your sources, because it goes back to what we were talking about last night. In one of these videos, you read an email that you received from a source, right? And I won't say who it is. You can say if you want. Which the email was pretty detailed, it's pretty believable, said he had connections with lots of different federal agencies, said all this information was being dropped in this mega upload file, right? 7 to 11 terabyte file. The email was very detailed. It named just a host of Hollywood and political actors that are all pedophiles, that are all going to be exposed by this download. The person went on to tell you that they would provide you details of that information. And it was all coming out. It was going to be CIA drug trafficking, all this stuff, right? So that was over a week ago, I believe, maybe more. I'm just curious about that information. I'm just curious actually about the information that you're reporting on. So I warned you when you called me. I warned you about sources approaching you with information, especially information that sounds unbelievable, you know. So how did you verify that information, and why hasn't anything that he said been borne out so far?
So stuff has been borne out, actually. I do want to make a correction. John McCain was executed, and that's been proven to be so.
Okay. Tell me that. Okay, that was one of them. John McCain has been executed.
I told everyone that John McCain was it was a forced suicide. John McCain was executed, which I know you don't follow Q, but Q also talked about that as well. Suicide weekend, on the weekend that McCain died. But I made a video before this whole thing happened about McCain being executed. And
okay,
John,
what's your evidence for that?
So my evidence, other than the sources that came to me and showed me, and also what I knew was true, my evidence is that when John Kasich, the governor of Ohio, was on CNN, he said, when we put him to death.
Put him to rest.
No, he didn't say that. He said, put him to death. I have the video clip. He says, put him to death.
Right. And
you don't say and you never say put him to rest. You say laid to rest. He said, put him to death.
Right.
It's very obvious. It's very clear. Because Kasich is an idiot. He's always been an idiot. If you've ever watched him eat pancakes, you know what an animal he is. And he made a slip of the tongue. But he said it live on CNN, and I'm sorry, but no one's going to convince me that that's not proof, because you never say put him to death. No one says that. That's completely different from laid to rest, or, you know, all the other expressions we use at a funeral.
You can't say put to rest?
I say laid. I mean, I've always heard he was laid to rest. I've never heard put to rest.
You said he's an idiot. He couldn't have effed up. I mean, do you think that's really proof? I'm just wondering.
I think he's an idiot that he effed up, actually.
Right.
Yeah, I do think it's proof. Look, I actually put a video about that specific clip to say, look, guys, this is showing you that the sources I have are credible. I do believe it's proof, and I think that as we go forward, eventually the entire story about John McCain and what really happened to him will be revealed. He will not be allowed to die with the rose-colored hoax that has been put on because of national security interests, I suppose, is why it had to happen. But I do believe the truth will come out eventually.
The truth will come out eventually, but as far as you're concerned, you already know the truth, which is that he was executed.
I'm talking about the truth of his entire legacy. There's so many Americans out there that don't know about the hundreds of people that were killed when he was a young man on that Navy boat. There's so many people who don't know about the treasonous things he's done. There's so many people that don't know about his connections to a major pedophile ring in Arizona. These things are not known by the general public, maybe by the audience you have or the red pill public on the internet, but most Americans don't know about that. And I believe that history will verify that this man was a very evil man, and that when we look back, most people will know who this man truly was, and that he absolutely deserved a military tribunal where he was tried and swiftly executed.
Well, we all pray, that will be the case, that it will be revealed. What everybody who's looked into it knows is that John McCain is a war criminal. I mean, he's, not what he was painted to be in the media. He was a jerk, and he was a mass murderer, basically. But the reason that video got so many views is because you said he was executed, and I'm just asking you, are you sure?
Can I ask you why you don't believe that Q is legitimate?
Well, could I ask? Well, who's Q?
That's a good question. I've heard Michael Flynn. I've heard 9 to 11 people that are close to Trump. Obviously, someone who's close to Trump. That's for sure.
If you don't know who it is, then how can you trust the information?
So I have dealt with that situation because anons will contact me and I say, why don't you just come out and, like Fiona Barnett or Isaac Cappy or myself, why don't you come out with your names? Why do you have to remain anonymous? And I have to say I haven't gotten a clear answer, except that they say, well, it's, if I came out into the public and really revealed who I am, it would either my life would be in danger or would cause a host of other problems. Mm-hmm. So, I will tell you, Nathan, there is a certain sense where you have to believe that that they're telling you the truth.
Okay, well, why would I believe that when the very first thing he said was a verifiable lie, which is that Hillary Clinton was going to be locked up the next day, and then he went on to say that the Podestas and
that was the first question I had when everyone started telling me about Q. So basically, Q does release disinformation to throw off the deep state, and the second thing is that, and we'll see if this bears out to be true, but that the dates Q gave were actually for 2018, not 2017, because he never actually specified 2017. He just said November, blah, blah, blah. When I asked Isaac Cappy about it, because he called me a couple of weeks ago, I asked him why he was such a fan of Q. And he told me that actually a lot of the stuff did happen. We don't know about it. A lot of arrests were made. That's why McCain had a boot on and Hillary had a boot on. These were those tracking bracelets they give to people who are, on house arrest or whatever. And so Isaac Cappy said, look, this stuff has happened, but now we're seeing it play out in the real world. I thought, that sounds legitimate. To be honest, there was one Q drop that I really have a problem with, and it was the one about Roswell and the vastness of space. Q seems to be talking about extraterrestrials, and of course, I believe that all extraterrestrials are fallen angels. Now, maybe Q believes that too. He didn't specify. I don't know. But I will tell you that it really seems clear to me that Q does know what he's talking about, because when he talked about, it was a post on June 30th, every dog has his day, and then John McCain dies exactly 30 days later. He had 30 in brackets. 30 days later, on International Dog Day, John McCain dies, his funeral. And to me, I was like, Q just predicted when McCain was executed. So to me, that was a huge Q proof. And then I've also started watching War Drummer. War Drummer is a man who's mightily filled with the Holy Spirit. He gives these amazing teachings on the Bible. I really like him. And he does these amazing Q proofs that I've never seen anyone do. And if you haven't heard of War Drummer, I would encourage you to watch him.
Well, in the end, it's all interpretation, right? I mean, that's your proof. It's not. I mean, you have to understand regular people listen to that, and there are a lot of things he says. He says a million different things that could have a million different interpretations, and people take those interpretations and they apply them to the real world. And then when things come out that are fake, like the fake picture of Air Force One, somehow that's dismissed as just being necessary disinformation. And honestly, if you want me to believe in Q, I want to know who it is. I want to know who it is because I don't know their motivations. I don't know why Q said that we need regime change in Iran. Do you know why Q said that we need regime change in Iran?
Because the people in Iran are very oppressed. He's not advocating a war like the Bush and the Obamas.
What's your evidence
that the Iranian people need a regime change because they're living under tyranny?
Why do you think? What's your evidence that they're living under tyranny? They have a freer country than we do in a lot of respects.
You know what the Ayatollah believes and how he acts?
Tell me. How he acts. Go ahead. Tell me.
Well, first of all, Islam is a religion of the devil. Islam believes in pedophilia.
So does Judaism. So does Judaism.
No.
The Talmud does.
The Talmud. Listen.
So, I mean, you're saying, I'm just equating
Talmud
this, right?
Teaches pedophilia, but the Talmud has nothing to do with the Jewish scriptures and Torah.
Okay, I'm in Iran, right? I'm going to say Jews believe in pedophilia. We're over here, we're going to say Muslims agree with pedophilia. But in reality, it's a little more nuanced, right? You're Jewish and you don't believe in the Talmud. So is it possible someone could also be Muslim and not believe in pedophilia?
Is it possible that someone can be a Muslim and not believe in the Quran? No, the Quran teaches. I don't know.
I've met a lot of Muslims.
Met a Muslim who doesn't believe in the Quran. Have you?
Are they pedophiles?
Well, the Quran teaches pedophilia. The Bible does not.
But the Talmud does, and you're Jewish, right?
The Jews, true Jews, I'm not talking about the fake ones. True Jews believe in the written Torah, not the Talmud, which is a bunch of man-made crap that was added on many years after the Torah was codified and written. Okay. So I challenge you, do the Muslims say the same thing about the Quran? No.
Well,
they believe in Muhammad, who lived in the 6th century, and Muhammad himself testifies that he had sex with little underage children.
Okay. Well, the first thing, I believe it was Moses in the Bible. I believe he's the guy that comes out right in Genesis. He comes out, and the first thing he does is kill somebody and hide his body in the desert. What's up with that?
Moses, no. Okay, let's get the facts straight. So this is Exodus.
Was it Exodus or was it Genesis?
Moses sees that the Israelites are being oppressed by these wicked, tyrannical Egyptians, and then he righteously kills that man. Just like Phineas took a spear and righteously stuck a spear between two fornicating Midianites, and because he did that, God withheld a plague. Now, am I advocating that we go do that right now? No, because we're not living under a Torah government, and we will not live under a Torah government until Jesus Christ of Nazareth returns with power and glory from the sky. But what I am saying is Moses did not murder someone. He defended and protected an Israelite that was being beaten to death.
And then he hid his body in the desert so nobody would find it, right?
Moses was scared. He ran out and was scared. He thought the Pharaoh was going to kill him, which probably the Pharaoh would. But if you go to the book of Acts, Moses is mentioned in the Hall of Fame of Faith, and even in Acts 7, when Stephen talks about Moses, he talks about Moses killing that Egyptian as a good and positive thing. And Stephen was so mightily filled with the Holy Spirit that the Jews stoned him to death. So Moses did a very good thing. It's just he was personally very scared about what he did.
Would Jesus have said it? Would Jesus have done that?
Jesus took a whip and went through the money changers' temple and threw over the tables. He would not have killed someone because he was not under a Torah government. There was no stoning laws. He was under the Roman Empire.
Was Jesus acting the way he was because of laws, or was he doing it because of God's law?
Well, Jesus, just like Moses, was filled with the Holy Spirit. So they both did what they were supposed to do because they were guided by the same Spirit from the Father.
Well, it seems to me the spirit of Jesus is different than the spirit of the Old Testament, in the sense that the Old Testament was filled with violence, greed, vengeance, sacrifice, animal sacrifice, and then almost human sacrifice. Much different than Jesus, in my impression of it. It's interesting you say righteous
That's a
murder. I just don't equate that with.
You're quoting a belief from Marcion, who lived in the 2nd century, and he tried to call the Tanakh the Old Testament and the Brit Hashah the New, because, like yourself and many others, there's this mythology that somehow the God of the Old Testament is completely different from the God of the New Testament. And yet we know from scriptures that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He changes not. So you will find many passages in the Old Testament, especially in the Psalms, where David goes on and on about God being a compassionate and loving and wonderful God. And you will find many scriptures in the New Testament where Jesus talks about hellfire, judgment, eternal damnation. You know, Jesus talks more about damnation and hellfire in the New Testament than the old prophets combined. You can actually count it up. If you read also the epistles and especially Revelation, there's a lot of judgment, fire, indignation. I mean, look at how Jesus is going to return. He came the first time as Yosef ben David, or excuse me, Yosef, the son of Yosef, as a suffering servant, as described in Isaiah 53, a suffering lamb who was crucified and then rose again on first fruits. But the second coming is he's coming as Ben David. He's coming as a warrior. It says there'll be fire in his eyes. His clothes will literally be dripping with the blood of his enemies. It says the blood will be so high it'll rise up to the horse's bridle. Jesus is coming back to commit genocide against every single wicked person that refuses to obey him. That's the Jesus Christ that's returning. So the same Jesus Christ in the New Testament is the same God the Father in the Old Testament. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And I don't accept the premise that the Old Testament God is somehow different from the New Testament God. I fully reject that premise.
It's just a question of what Jesus taught versus what people seem to get the impression of God from. You know, my impression is that God really loves all of us and isn't vengeful and doesn't want to hurt people. You know, I don't think God wants to hurt anybody. I think God loves everyone, actually, regardless of their faith. But we're a little off topic. Let's go. Can we go back to that big drop that was supposed to have all that information in it? Because what happened was I asked you about the source, and you told me, and then I think you said when you followed up with that person, you didn't get any responses with the proof that he offered in the email. Why don't I ask you, how did that person approach you? How'd that go?
Okay, so let me back up here. There are 3 people right now, one in the United States, one in Australia, and one I don't know where they are, who have a total of 17 terabytes of information. Only 11 gigabytes have been released.
Who are the people that have it? I'm sorry.
So the one in the United States, I have not gotten the permission to reveal his identity. In fact, he probably would be very upset if I revealed his identity. The one in Australia is very well known, and Isaac Cappy's been talking to him regularly. His name is Elijah Priest. He's in Australia. Fiona Barnett. When I talked to Fiona, because Fiona called me a couple weeks ago, and then we've been going back and forth privately on Twitter. She told me that Elijah is part of her crew, and so Elijah is the one right now that is doing the whole Insinuate that Isaac Cappy is talking about. In fact, Isaac Cappy went on with Dustin Nemos last night. I don't know if you follow Dustin Nemos at all, but Dustin Nemos and Isaac Cappy had a big interview last night where they talked about Eli Priest. And I would encourage you to watch that interview because they give way more up-to-date information about the information that Eli Priest has, what he's doing. There's a rogue CIA agent down in Antarctica. Isaac and Dustin talk about this. And then Eli Priest also does have a Twitter account as well. What is it? I'll have to ask Isaac what it is. I follow him on Twitter.
Okay, so I just want to know about this because there's a lot of disinformation, and then there are people posing as things like as you've been talking about, like you've alleged along with Fiona things about Craig Sawyer, right? So you guys believe that he's put out there as being interested in rescuing children or doing something about child trafficking, and that he's really not, that he's an agent, right? So those things really exist. So this guy, is that the guy that emailed you, that email you read? on that one video where that said the drop was coming out, and they said they were connected to all these government organizations.
You're talking about the video I made about Rachel and Keith Krause, who
No.
are meddling with the VOP?
No. We could talk about VOP too, but I don't want to get myself in too much trouble. No. I'm talking about the video where there were all these names: Oprah Winfrey and James Comey.
Okay, yeah, the 45,000,
and that was supposed to be part of that drop. You said it was the guy that emailed you said
45,000 indictment list. I got even before I met that drop. I got that from a female actress, a Hollywood insider, who reached out to me. She has also not given me permission to release her name, but I have talked to her on the phone. She's the one who initially guided me to the link with the 45 when it was still 45,000 indictments. Now, of course, it's 51,000. But when it was 45,000 indictments, she was the one who led me initially to that list. And I still have a link to that list. It was one of my earlier videos back in early August. It's titled 45,000 Indictments of Top Hollywood and DC. I forget the title, but you can find it. And I have a link there, and you can go to it right now. And that was the link that she gave to me. And then after that, these other sources that are connected to Fiona and Eli Priest and these guys, then they confirmed that and gave me an even more extensive list.
Okay. Are there names on that list with these indictments, with these people named?
They've revealed a few of the names, not obviously not all 45,000, but I can read off some of them right now if you want me to.
Well, are any of them George Bush or anything like that?
Yeah, they have both a Hollywood section and a DC section.
They do.
I believe George Bush is named on.
When you say they, who? There's a Hollywood actress that gave you this information, because I haven't seen it published anywhere else. So I'm curious. You're getting a lot of exclusive news. Okay, you're getting contacted exclusively. Okay, and let's just talk about this email, because the email promised a lot of things that I believe have not been borne out in fact. And in fact, I've looked at the files in that supposedly 10 terabyte download, and it looks like it was to fuck with people. You know what I mean? It's not real information. It includes an email from that Eli Priest. It includes links from the Corbett report. It's not actually a real information drop. So I'm just curious why you would trust anything else. I mean, that's why I asked you. I said, how can you say this?
Let's deal with one, because I think the best way to deal with this is to deal this with one specific example at a time.
Okay.
So otherwise, we're going to be talking in vague, broad brushstrokes.
Okay, so let me be specific.
Is the Bush Senior docket that I got really attacked by, because everyone looked at that Bush Senior docket. They looked up the number. They called the Arkansas Supreme Court. They said this is a hoax, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Well, here's the deal. And I made a second video about this. First of all, those papers have not been filed yet. That's why there's no judge's stamp or signature. They've not been filed yet. And they will not be filed until we revert back to a common law judicial system rooted in the Constitution. Right now, we have a maritime admiralty judicial system that began to creep into America way back in 1871 and took more and more strides all the way up until World War II. And now we live in a completely illegal judicial system under admiralty law. That's why the American flag has a golden fringe around it, which is illegal. That is not supposed to be there. In fact, you'll see Trump, and this is what encouraged me about Trump. He stands sometimes by a flag that has no golden fringe. He even hugs flags that don't have a golden fringe, which is the first president I've ever seen do that. But we will eventually revert back to a constitutional common law judicial system, which is the way our founding fathers intended it. And when we do, that docket, those papers that will be filed against Bush Sr. will go into effect, and hopefully before he dies, so that we can have a public trial and that he will be publicly executed for his many crimes, starting with being implicated in assassinating John F. Kennedy all the way to the present.
Not to go back to it, I want to talk about a few things. But you talk a lot about public executions. David Seaman used to do that a lot. Is that Christian? I don't think it is, in my opinion. So is that Christian to want to kill people?
It is, yeah. In the Torah, it says very clearly, if you take a life, your life is forfeit. And if you study what was done in the days of ancient Israel in the Torah, if there were two or more witnesses and they went through a trial and then the elders agreed, then that person would be publicly stoned. So yes, public execution was even done in early colonial America, as well as public flogging. And it had a very positive influence in limiting crime. Because I tell you, if you go out and steal a loaf of bread and then you see a thief get publicly flogged, you're probably not going to steal again. If you decide to have sex with a little boy or little girl and murder that baby or murder that child, and they get publicly executed, I'll tell you one thing, we're going to put a stop to the pedophile and the murdering pedivores real fast. Public execution is a great way to go, as long as there's evidence, prosecutions, trials, because I do not advocate a French Revolution where chaos ensues and in vigilante mob-like style, we start executing everyone. That is not what I advocate at all. And that's not what the Constitution of the United States advocates either.
Do you think it's possible, though, that people get that impression because people kind of, they watch videos on YouTube and they get a little wound up? Do you think it's possible that using that kind of rhetoric could actually be a little...
I've seen that rhetoric in my comment section where people are like, yeah, let's go kill all these pedivores and pedophiles right now. Vigilante, we're going to take them out. I say, guys, we are a nation of laws. We got to have the Constitution and common law, but not like what we have now where it takes years to do a trial. You provide the evidence, you prosecute the crime, you make it as public as possible so everyone knows what's going on, and then you publicly execute that person after they've been tried and prosecuted. That's what I'm advocating. And all I can say is that it's biblical. It was done in colonial America, and I think it should be done now.
Okay. Yeah, I just personally, the way I understand Jesus, he wouldn't do that. He says not, we're not the ones to judge. God does that.
I disagree. Jesus obeyed the Torah to a T, and if he didn't, he would have never been allowed to teach in synagogues. So Jesus obviously believed in that because it's in Torah, and he says himself, I came not to abolish the Torah.
Okay. All right. Oh boy, I got confused. Well, let's talk, because I keep going back to that email. The drop, okay, it has links to stuff like the Corbett report. It has an email from this guy, Elijah Priest, okay, and so he said that drop had information about CIA drug trafficking, information about all these people being pedophiles. But as far as I can tell, that's not true. So why do so what does that mean to you about this source?
So that specific drop that you're talking about, the mega drop, first of all, we need to get our facts straight. There are 17 terabytes of information in total. Only 11 gigabytes have been released. So that's why you see all those empty folders in the file, because a good portion of that 17 terabytes have not been dropped. Now, why is Eli Priest and my source in the United States and the third guy, why are they not releasing all 17 terabytes? That, my friend, is a very good question. And I have tried to reach out to Eli Priest directly. So far, I've only been able to talk to Fiona directly, and I have not been able to reach Eli. Isaac talks to Eli all the time, so I would hope Isaac would ask Eli that simple question, because I want to know, if you have all this information, why not be as transparent and visible as possible and just let it all out? So that's something I want to ask him.
Does it concern you that you haven't been able, because he promised that he would provide all this information, which was really unbelievable, and it's the reason people watch it. Like, information that's really unbelievable. It's sort of like National Enquirer, right? Like, people think, oh, holy crap. But in reality, he's just made a lot of claims based on stuff that you can't verify and hasn't come through with the information. It's kind of like Q, right? So I'm just wondering, are we supposed to take your word for stuff?
Most of my personal videos are not based off that information. For instance, the video about John Kasich selling his daughters out to pedophilia that you sort of were dismissive of, but I know you apologize for that, but you were sort of dismissive of it based off the title. Well, if you look at the links, and I actually talked to the guy, okay, he contacted me personally about this. This was done in a court in Ohio. This is all on record. This was all done, and I provide all this proof of what happened with John Kasich and these two daughters of his, and what happened in that school. Okay. This is stuff that I've talked to that has nothing to do with Eli Priest. And then my other video that caused a lot of controversy, which was the child sex trafficking ring done by JR Engineering in Ohio. Okay. The day after I released that story, JR Engineering took their website completely off the internet, so much that if you go to it now, it just flips you back to Google. My source there, Connie, she's been harassed all her life because she's the daughter of the father who runs this business. She's been harassed and targeted all her life. The day after I post that video, she's not had a single person harass her. Not at all. So a lot of this stuff has nothing to do with the Eli Priest drop. Okay. I've been doing a lot of my investigative reporting and stuff outside and beyond that. I'm just saying that specific mega drop that Eli Priest did drop and release, I want to ask him why he's not releasing all the information. And I asked my United States source, and he said because if he released it, he'd get killed. That's what he told me. So,
do you understand why I'm asking you these questions?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I know, and I know that you have a skepticism, a healthy skepticism. I'm not trying to condemn you or criticize you or anything. I know you have in fact, I actually respect and admire the way you handle interviews. But nevertheless, you and I do have some very fundamental differences in our core belief system in terms of how we approach life. And that may be why, we're sort of going down different paths. But I do understand why you're asking the questions.
Okay, cool. You know why? Is you had Michael Whalen on, okay? And Michael Whalen is not political. And
Right.
So let's talk about this rally. I want to talk about what's going to go on in D.C. It's really important. And I know you have until about, you have another 15 minutes or so, right? Is that about it? Okay.
Yeah.
You're into Q. We already talked about that, and you're into Trump. And so you suggested this event in Washington, D.C., November 9th. Okay, in order to go in front of the White House, I believe, and then say some things. You said in the video, they're kind of chants, "We support you, Mr. Trump. We want to do this." You suggest that people wear their Q stuff and their Trump stuff to show that it's not a protest against the president. People like me and like Michael Whalen aren't necessarily political, and to some people, it's important that, to a lot of people that are passionate about stopping pedophilia,
Right.
they're not into Trump. So it actually, are you concerned it could be a turnoff for people, and it actually is
That's
divisive?
a good question. Yeah, that's a great question. So I have made it clear in my channel that this Luciferian or satanic pedophile and pedophore problem goes across both Republican and the Democrats. For instance, I made a video exposing the late Antonin Scalia. He was a Luciferian pedophile. So I'm just as hard on the hard right, the religious right, as I would be on the liberal left. The reason I specifically said that it would be a good idea for people to wear Trump shirts is because I want the Secret Service and the police around there to know we're not there to cause problems with the president. I think that's very important in the climate that we're living in. I fully understand that, just like what Isaac Cappy says and Fiona Barnett says, that this problem should not be limited to any political belief. Any decent human would want innocent children protected. Anyone. What I'm trying to do, the whole purpose of this, and I don't even know if I should call it a rally, because all we're going to do is literally stand on the sidewalk and lift up our voices, which I still have to do investigation about, making sure I get the right permit and all that good stuff to get as close to the White House as we can. But all I want to do is I want to encourage the president to take down these high-ranking Luciferian pedophiles, because he's already shown through his actions that he's been cracking down on the low and mid-level child sex trafficking rings like no other president in history. With Operation Broken Heart, he arrested 2,300 pedophiles. He broke up a major pedophile child sex trafficking ring in Florida. If you look at the numbers, he has arrested more child sex trafficking offenders in 1 year than Obama did in all 8 years. And in fact, more than any other president has ever done since I don't know how long, since maybe we've had this problem. I don't know. But you look at the numbers. So he obviously is showing a very, very solid conviction of wanting to address this problem. He actually signed an executive order last December where he said he's going to seize all the assets of human traffickers and child sex traffickers, which no other president has ever done. So because he's, through his actions over the last 2 years, he's shown that he takes this issue seriously, at least more seriously than any other president I know of. I want to specifically get his ear and say, hey, Trump, we're all for you. We're supporting you. We want you to now go after these high-level ones. We want Obama taken down. We want Hillary taken down. We want Michael Pence taken down, by the way. This cuts across all political spectrums because we want the pedophiles gone, whether they're Republican or Democrat or independent. We want them gone. We do not want to live in a nation anymore where the leaders in DC and Hollywood are raping innocent children and eating them and molesting them and abusing them. This has got to stop.
Okay, and I've heard that argument before. And everybody can agree with that. They want it to stop. I pulled up an article. I wonder if I don't have it up at the moment. Hold on, everybody's seeing something else. You know that Donald Trump, one of the first things he said was that he wasn't going to go after Hillary Clinton, right? I mean, that was one of the first things he ever said. I'm going to pull up the article right now.
Yeah, I watched that 60-minute interview, and you should watch War Drummer because War Drummer actually specifically addresses that 60-minute interview. So Trump, you have to listen to his words carefully because he's a very smart guy. He says, I want to center on the economy. I want to do that stuff. I want to leave this stuff alone. Next time we meet, I'll let you know what I'm going to do with Hillary, okay?
He said, quote, he said he doesn't, quote, want to hurt the Clintons. I really don't. She went through a lot and suffered greatly in many ways, unquote.
Mm-hmm. So if I say, you know, I really, really don't want to have to take out the trash. I don't want to do it. I just don't want to take out the trash. But then I go take out the trash. So Trump is very smart. Trump will have Hillary Rodham Clinton arrested. I don't know when. Liz Crokin is saying that she's 1,000% sure that Hillary will be arrested before November 11th. I don't know where she gets that date, but that's, you know, she's an investigative journalist that has a lot of credibility from what I can tell. But Trump will have this woman arrested. And that's why at a recent rally, he even said, yeah, it seems like she's getting away with this. Well, we'll see if she gets away with this. We'll see if she gets away with this. So I'll tell you one thing. If Trump does not arrest Hillary Clinton, he will have a mutiny on his hands with the 30%, 33% strong base of American population that support him. And of course, I personally believe that 33% is a lie. I think a lot more people support Trump than what the media reports, but that's a different topic. But I think he's going to arrest her. No doubt about it.
And that's based on, just in the end, it's based on faith, right?
It's based on, so we can only judge people by what they do, by what their actions are, because I don't know your heart, you don't know my heart, I can't see people's hearts. So we have to judge people based on what they do. That's what Jesus said. Base them off their fruits. And so I can only judge Trump on what he has done. So I hear what he says, but then I look at what he does. And what he's done seems to give a lot of credence that he will have Hillary arrested.
Okay. Yeah. You know, people have different, you realize not everybody is, you know, that trafficking thing, that human trafficking bill, that was just to target political targets, mostly from, I think, Iran and Russia. It wasn't really about child trafficking. I mean, if he was really interested, you know, they would have gone after the Clinton Foundation. They would have gone after, you know, there are a lot of things that could happen. I don't know if you noticed, but there's no justice, right? Peter Strzok, Rosenstein may finally step down, but I mean, where is the swamp being drained? I mean, the trade policy is being dictated by a Rothschild banker who bailed Trump out, you know, back when he had trouble with his real estate projects, right? He has Nikki Haley at the UN lying to everyone, trying to get us into more war. He brought on John Bolton, who's the biggest neocon warmonger in the world. I assume you're anti-war? I'm
anti-unjust war, absolutely.
Do you think, do you have Do you think any of the wars we're involved in right now are unjust by any of them?
I don't think we should have any. I was a big Ron Paul supporter back in 2007, 2008. I don't think we should be empire building. One of the things Trump campaigned upon was we're not going to continue this empire building. We're going to bring our troops home. I will tell you though that you just threw out a bunch of information, so I'm going to try to respond to everything that you just said.
Okay.
Once Trump declassifies these FISA docs, it will implicate not only James Comey and Andrew McCabe, it's going to implicate Obama and Hillary in interfering with the 2016 election. Everything that they've said about this Russian collusion, they're just projecting upon Trump what they are guilty of. And so Trump is going to do this. It's just, when is he going to do it? And how is this, there's a lot of stuff that we don't see that are behind the scenes. In terms of the child sex and human trafficking, I'm going to have to disagree with you. There's nothing in the wording of that executive order that pertains specifically to Iran.
Well, he basically names, there are actually names. It's like, we will freeze the assets of people involved in human trafficking, such as these targets, And I believe, from what I remember, that it was, foreigners that basically they wanted to target politically. So I just disagree. A lot of the stuff, I guess, the reason I'm asking questions is there's information going out there. A lot of people are watching. A lot of people believe it. It gives a lot of hope, but there's no evidence. There really isn't any evidence. So, I mean, there's hope, there's faith, but I'm afraid from what I've seen so far. So, I mean, but we disagree. It's okay.
The executive order that was signed on December 21st, 2017, by the authority vested in me as president of the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, including the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the National Emergencies Act, the Global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act, of the Immigration Nationality Code. I, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, find that the prevalence and severity of human rights abuse and corruption that have their source in whole or in substantial part outside of the United States, such as those committed or directed by persons listed in the annex to this order, have reached such scope and gravity that they threaten the stability of international political and economic systems. Human rights abuse and corruption undermine the values that form an essential foundation of stable, secure, and functioning societies, have devastating impacts on individuals, weaken democratic institutions, degrade the rule of law, blah, 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 as well as, so this is the key. So he talks about outside the United States. Then he says, the United States seeks to impose tangible and significant consequences on those who commit serious human rights abuse or engage in corruption, as well as to protect the financial system of the United States itself from abuse of these same persons. I therefore determined that serious human rights abuse and corruption around the entire world constitute an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States, and I hereby declare a national emergency to deal with that threat. So, I mean, the United States is included in that term around the world. So I don't think that you can say he's only targeting people beyond the borders of the United States, at least the way that I understand the way this is written.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, basically it's to target it's to be able to freeze the assets of whoever you want, and then also be able to maybe sanction U.S. companies who choose to do business with those people, such as in the follow-up to that document. So anyway, no problem. A lot of people do look at that as evidence that Trump is doing something. I don't think he is, and I think thinking that he is just going to slow us down from making real change. But that's just me. I have to ask you, because people have been blowing up the chat. Is there something going on with your girlfriend? People are talking about text messages or something. I haven't seen anything, so I'm just, a bunch of people in the chat are blowing me up, saying I have to ask. Is there?
I'm a single guy living here in Juneau, Alaska.
Okay, and there's nothing you're aware of that you have to respond to as far as
I don't have to respond to anything.
Nothing.
No.
Okay. All right.
Not at all. The truth will prevail. Although I will tell people that I'm very open. I'm an open book. And if anyone wants to know about my past, I have not only a free autobiography that I've written on my website that details my past in detail, but I also have a video I made about a year ago called Broken to Pieces by Yah. And it's very detailed about anything anyone wants to know about my past.
Okay, and I'm sorry. I mean, literally, I don't have the information. That's why I don't want to get into it. So I'm sorry. Okay. Anyway, it was really, really great to have you on my show. Obviously, I've questions and stuff. So, but you're doing. I don't think you're a shill. Like, I don't think you're disinformation or anything like that. And that's why I thought it was. I wanted to talk to you and just express.
And just so you know, for your own edification, Nathan. Like, for instance, I'm working on 6 stories right now, and all 6 stories have nothing to do with Eli Priest or anything.
Okay.
They have to do with. I mean, I'm sincerely trying to not only protect the innocent children and expose pedophiles, but I want to bring what real journalism should have always been, which is to be as authentic and honest and credible as possible. And so, I'm subscribed to your YouTube channel. I love your interviews, and hopefully you'll be edified by the videos that I come out with.
Fair enough. All right, man. Thanks for coming on my show. I appreciate it. All right.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
See you. Okay. I'm going to head on over to Twitch for a minute. That was my interview with Daniel Lee. Hopefully I was able to get all the questions out that people were interested in knowing. I really want to thank him for coming on the show and answering those questions in as forthright a way as possible. Thanks, everybody, for joining us here on YouTube. We do have a sponsor for the show for bringing you kind of information like this. That's Truth Revolution Clothing. I'm wearing my shirt. It says Truth Matters. I think it does. And it's a very popular shirt for that reason. Truthclothing.io. I'll show you our website. It's how the show's funded. And with your donations, we're not shills for anybody else, just for you. Anyway, we just got a brand new shirt, Question Everything with the Last American Vagabond. We have our Russian bot shirt, which is still in style, mostly real, all premium quality shirts. So it's different than what you would get from what other people are selling. We get them printed. We pick out the shirts. They're printed here in California. We stock them. We ship them. And then we have Doshi stickers and more stuff coming all the time. That's at truthclothing.io. You can join us on Twitch for the after show, twitch.tv/lifttheveil411, or download the app, which is Lift the Veil, Lift the Veil, anywhere podcasts are given away for free. Did I tell you that? Oh, no, not podcast, Twitch. Follow the channel, and then you'll get your notifications. And the chat's good there and everything else. Controversial show. Glad we get to do that kind of thing. We'll have more controversy on this channel coming up. For now, for YouTube, for me and Doshi, that is what it is.